down here a minute, Irving. Hey, okay, you can be seated if you would. And when we first started this club back in 2017, there was a guy that I found that was even more of a Trump supporter than I was, and it's this guy right here. And Irving, what was it about Donald Trump that made you, and let's see, you were celebrating a wedding anniversary back then. How many years were you married? How many years have you been married now?
72.
He's only been married 72 years. I mean, and I'm sorry, and how many wives have you had? Only one? Anyway.
Let her stand up for a second.
Oh, okay, Bernice, where you at, Bernice? Yeah, people want to see who could be married to this guy for that many years. Look at, is he a doll baby? Wow! I tell you what a couple. But Irving, something about just who you were, your spirit and your love for God and country, and this Donald Trump. Just what was it that got you all passionate about Donald Trump?
Well, basically, the first thing that I must tell you is that I was honored by Donald Trump 2 years ago in the State of the Union. And I must tell everybody else, I went in on D-Day, went through the Battle of the Bulge, right into Berlin. We stopped at the Elbe River, then I went into Berlin. So evidently he must have seen my record or recognized something and brought me in. And believe me, who am I to sit in the Oval Office with the President of the United States? But I must tell you one thing. He's a great, great guy. I had him laughing. I had telling him jokes. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful situation for me. And I'm so grateful to God. And I thank God every single day of my life. So believe me when I tell you that.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you for coming. Yeah, it's okay. And a vet, World War II vet. I don't think you got that in there at all. Well, let me just say thanks to each and every one of you all that paid even to be here tonight to hear Charlie Kirk. As most of you all know that comes to our meetings, it's not often that do we even have a price to get in. I like the free thing, but we had to pay for this facility. And Charlie Kirk had not, I don't think, been to the villages, and so consequently, about the best we could do is get a deep discount in his typical speaking rate that he has. And I told one of his people that if he had come to the villages before and he knew the crowd and the support that we have here for Trump and America and our Constitution, that he would probably pay us to come here the next time. So, but thank you all again this time for putting out the money to be here, and we appreciate that very much. And we're going to next just ask for a couple of board people to stand and be recognized, and a couple of them wanted to share a couple of things that's going on. So let's start, if we could, with Jesse Young. And Jesse is a great team leader on our board and started our security thing with the club. And Jesse Young. Jesse?
Thank you. You all look awesome. It's great to declare that we are no longer the silent majority. Amen. We are standing up. They pushed us as far as they're going to push us, right? So it's good to see everyone. Listen, if you're interested in being on the security team, please see me after the meeting, and I'll see what we can do, get some information. If you are interested in joining our security team, I will let you know that we do a background check. So if you have anything hidden in the closet, it's going to come out, okay? But that's all right. We have a great security team here. I want to say also that I appreciate Wildwood PD that showed up out here as a presence. So we thank them. We have a great relationship with Wildwood Police Department and also Sumter County Sheriff's Department. We always appreciate when they come out on any of our events. Can I just say how much we appreciate and honor every serviceman and woman in this congregation right here, and every first responder. Can I ask you, if you've been in the service, or you're a first responder, can I just ask you to stand? We would like to honor you. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you. You are why we are here tonight or today. Amen. So listen, one last thing I want to share is I'm a licensed instructor with the NRA for concealed carry. If anyone is interested in getting your concealed carry, and I know I have a lot of you out here that have already been through my class. I was telling someone earlier that I've probably in our congregation qualified at least 60 people. So the last thing you want to do is come into Freedom Fellowship and try to cause any trouble, okay? Our pastor had to stand up a while back and say, listen, if anyone comes in and causes any trouble, I can't have 60 of you stand up and pull your firearms, okay? So we do have security at our church. But if you're interested, the 25th, on Monday, is my next class. Monday on the 25th, my next class. See me after this if you're interested. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless America.
Jesse, thank you very much. And I've asked Paul Bagley if he would, just to take 2 or 3 minutes, there we go, to take maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and Paul Bagley, each Sunday at our church of Freedom Fellowship, Paul Bagley gives just a little bit of a background about what has happened over the week and what's going on of interest that tells him that we're getting very close. So, Paul, if you would, just come up and greet the people and a couple of tidbits, please. Thank you, Paul.
All right. Yeah. Well, one thing for sure, the Supreme Court today voted 9-0 that you have to have a warrant to take somebody's firearm from their home. I mean, are you serious? Now, in a few days, they're going to do another, going to be listening to a very important court case on Roe v. Wade from Mississippi. And if we can just get 5 out of the 9, this would set back abortion. Man, I'll tell you what, it's going to take it. I'll tell you what it would do. It would set up the grand finale to maybe reverse Roe v. Wade. So just keep praying. Just keep praying. $735 million was just approved of arms sales to Israel to help defend them against any enemies. But not from any help from the squad. They still don't understand what's happening up there. But we, look, some of these folks are just on the wrong, they're in the communistic, socialistic society and need to be removed. Can you say amen? There's some other great things that's been happening also. If you look at things from a prophecy standpoint, all the things that's been happening as it relates in the Middle East here in the last few days, all points to the soon return of Jesus Christ. And America plays such a role in that. Because in Revelation 12, it talks about the woman or Israel having to flee into the wilderness under great heavy attack. But there's an eagle that flies over her and protects her while she's in the wilderness. And that eagle would represent the United States of America. This is very important. Because a lot of people think that America is nowhere in the Bible. But studying biblical prophecy, you'll find that it is in the Bible, that we are that nation that stands with them. Matter of fact, the Bible said that there would be a man in the 45th chapter of Isaiah who said that he would bless Israel and allow them to rebuild the temple. So when President Trump moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem on the 70th anniversary of Israel as a nation, it's quite interesting that it was King Cyrus who let the children of Israel go back out of Babylon after 70 years. So President Trump followed a prophecy to the very day, despite the fact that 5 presidents before him had run and said they would do the same thing, but then when got in office, didn't do it. I was up for a while, I was mad at all those guys until I realized they couldn't do it because it wasn't 70 years. So then I said, okay, God, then that means you got to put somebody in 2016 to do this. And Hillary was ahead in the polls. But when something prophetic is taking place, it doesn't matter what the polls say. That's why the man won. And it doesn't matter what they say about he can't come back.
Well, you get it. Paul's one of the people that just thinks that this man will be running again. And I kind of agree with you, Paul, and we can't wait. What an improvement over what we have right now. Let me just take 1 minute. If you are a current board member or working in the Villagers for Trump, would you just stand one time? We could see if you're a board member or you're in charge of a committee and you're doing anything at all with the thank you. I see Bob back here. Bob's our vice president now, Bob Johnson. Thank you all very much. Just want to recognize you all. Thank you very, very much as a group. Appreciate it. Almost ready to start. Got one other leader that I'd like to recognize and have him just come up. Bob, if you would come up just for a minute and greet the people and tell the folks about what you're doing for our conservative causes here in Central Florida. Thank you, Bob.
Folks, my name is Bob Rivernider. I'm with National Right Your Congressman, and I'm here tonight to ask you for a call to action. With National Right Your Congressman, we are like this organization, and this is an activist organization. I know Lynette talks about acting all the time. You need to take action in order to stop what's about to happen and what's happening in this country. Our research center recently sent out a regulation alert. The Department of Education right now has just issued a regulation. That regulation, let me just read a little bit about it to you. The United States Department of Education announced that officials are preparing to use taxpayer money for K-12 schools to advocate the idea that America is systemically racist, and anyone who thinks differently, including children, are part of the problem whether students know it or not. Folks, this is a regulation. A regulation becomes law after 30 days. If nobody does anything, this will be the law. The way you act is you go to the Federal Register, you take action, and you complain about it. The only way to stop it is adverse public action. You have 30 days to stop this. Regulations like this over the next couple of years. One of y'all may remember Donald Trump was famous for one thing in his presidency, cutting regulations. Guess what this administration and the people that are in these low-level cabinet positions are going to be doing, folks? Regulate, because regulations don't have to go through Congress. Some bureaucrat writes an idea that they have, a regulation, they put it in the Federal Registry, and if y'all do nothing, 30 days later, that becomes the law. Folks, act up, go to the Federal Registry. Thank you, David, I appreciate it. Let's stop this, folks. Thank you.
Bob. Thank you, and be sure and get us information. Suzanne, be sure and get the information. We can get it publicized if we can. You know, this is not on my we only got a couple more things. This is not on my agenda. But, Lynette, you've got to come up here. I am so proud of my wife, Lynette, who just a few months ago took on the job as the Faith Committee chairperson for our club, and she calls it the Salt and Light Committee. And she says, well, one of the things we got to do is get together from time to time. So she went to a Christian coffee shop here in the Villages called Standard. And she said, let's just get a few people together once a week on a Wednesday and see if they want to come and just talk about what's going on. And she started just a few months ago with 4 or 5 people. And you'll be there tomorrow. And she says, boy, I hope they can handle 50 or 60 people tomorrow, because I think that's how many we're going to have showing up over there. But, Lynette, anything you want to share with the people about your meeting tomorrow, and invite people to come, and what you're going to be doing after the meeting? Yeah.
Okay, so the Faith Committee starts, first of all, for those of you who go to church and you have influence with the people who are around you, like-minded people within your church. I know it's hard to find sometimes, but you can do it. And then we got people to register from the Trump Club who wanted to be involved in a very significant way with their churches and pastors. And so the Faith Committee had started several years ago with Bishop Samuel Cotto, and I just basically noticed that during COVID, a lot of people were not becoming very active in the month of April and May. So it's only been about a year that I actually started to fill in for Bishop Samuel Cotto, and a lot of you have become more aware of what we've been doing, like going up to Tallahassee, and we've been working with Christian Family Coalition. And basically, Diane, who I see right here, we got together with her and her husband a couple of months ago, and she said, there's a Christian coffee shop, and they have a library in the back. So it's on 441, the Standard, and we've been meeting there ever since, and it grew from a group of about 15, now it's like 45 people in a coffee shop. It's very tight, but tomorrow we have a lady, her name is Donna, and she's going to be talking about the glory that's going to be coming upon America and where Donald Trump plays a big role in God's plan for America. So she's going to speak more on a prophetic side, and then hopefully eventually do a live stream with Pastor Paul Bagley.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, babe. And so tomorrow will be a busy day, Lynette, and we've got an open board meeting in the morning. We believe in having open board meetings, and the more people come, the better. And that's at 9 o'clock at Panera Bread, and then right after that, we're going to hightail it over to the Standard Coffee Shop and have a time over there. Well, to introduce our speaker tonight is a good friend of mine, and he's no stranger here to the Villagers for Trump. In fact, we use the Cornerstone Credit Card Processing Company to take care of all the processing needs that we have as a group. But Nick is more than just doing things with Cornerstone. Nick touches a lot of people. He's friends with a lot of the conservative crowd that we've had, and people that we bring in here. And just as a FYI, Nick has embarked upon a big endeavor to try to replace some of the very liberal-owned social media platforms, and he's coming out with his own, what he calls System 7. So, Nick, if you would, just share a little bit about Cornerstone and your vision for System 7 and introduce our speaker. And Nick Logan, thank you for coming all the way here tonight to be with us. Thank you, Nick.
Well, thank you for having me, David. It's always a pleasure to come down. I consider myself a visiting villager for Trump because I get to come down. So know that there we go. That's a little better. Leave it off? Loud. Good. Okay, there we go. Eat the mic. That's what they tell you. Eat the mic. Okay. So no, there's a lot going on. One of the things that I've been convicted of or convinced of for the last about 7 years is that the idea of taking away guns is not the issue. The issue is taking away the bullets. And that's what's happening with the cancellation culture. Basically, anything that we use, and everyone in this room has probably looked at their iPhone 10, 15 times they've sat down. Okay, we communicate on it, we buy on it. Contextual commerce is what we call it, which is basically buying, donating. Anything that you do is being done on a handheld. I had to actually put mine over there so I wouldn't be looking at it. Okay, and that's the issue. So what's happening behind the scenes is an ecosystem that has evolved. We're working right now to replace everything from the social media aspect, the buying aspect, the donation aspect. And we've got some amazing people working with us. We're doing some work with some former people from the White House. And if anybody thinks that Trump is just sitting around playing golf, he's not. He's actively involved. The groups I'm working with, I'll say, what about this? And the person I work with on this, which I can't share who it is, but he worked directly with Trump, will walk out there and I could see him on the phone talking to the president, and he comes back in and he says, I think we should do this. And I'm like, I know who just talked to, So it's pretty amazing. He's very involved. If we do not control what's happening today with contextual commerce and social media and the buying and selling, we're going to be cut off. So we're getting down to the point now of actually authorizing credit cards. So when you authorize a credit card, it goes through a system, but ministries like American Family Association, and you guys know American Family Association? Okay, they couldn't shut them off over this issue with Target. Okay, he brought 1 million signatures to Target and said, don't allow transgenders to be in the bathroom. And the president and CEO basically said, that's it. Thank you for coming. And he flew back, and he was so dejected the next morning, and then within about 2 months, the guys at Stripe turned him off, okay? And they were saying, can't take credit cards. So they really hurt their ministry by cutting off their line. If you look online and Google this subject, there are many ministries getting cut off. So over the next few months, you'll see things that we're bringing out. Cornerstone is specifically designed to process donations for ministries and for neutral companies. Like we'll do the processing for Dunkin' Donuts or Cisco routers, but we won't do anything that would be standing against Christ. And then we're going to fill in with other services that you know today, including social media. We have a crowdfunding. We're going to call it, instead of GoFundMe, it's going to be God Funds Me. So we're going to use that one. So we have, there's some pretty cool stuff coming up. And it's all bulletproof. Everybody that works for us has built this and has backgrounds like in the CIA and really pretty sharp stuff. And they're all followers of Christ. So it's some good stuff. So anyway, along that line, one of the things that's very dear to me is where we go from here. I am absolutely resolute that the way that we will win this back is going to be done from the pulpit and through the schools. This is not a mistake agenda when we talk about the things that are happening in the schools. So it's a real blessing. I was upstairs when Charlie got a chance to speak at this group, and just to see the energy with you guys saying, you know what, we're going to change this, and it's a real blessing. I met Charlie a few years back at a group called Council for National Policy, and when I met him at the group, I was very encouraged to see someone that had just had an opportunity, the 2016, did anybody see him at the Republican convention? And you sit there and you're going, wait, this is the future, okay? The future has to be, we need to move over and support. The future, you will stand on the shoulders of the people that came before you, and that's the way it should be. So I got a chance to meet Charlie and was very thankful to meet him. And one of the things that people don't know about him is that he was an excellent quarterback in high school, okay? So he won't really talk much about that, but he was an excellent quarterback. I'm working with a gentleman right now who said, you should see the kid throw. But instead of going into football, he went into politics. Has made a huge, huge impact. And we're very thankful to have him here and like to welcome him up now to the podium. And please just listen to what he has to say and ask questions because he's got a good thought.
Thank you. What a great group. Thank you. This is, I actually haven't given a speech in about 2 weeks. I've been very preoccupied on things that actually matter. Not that this doesn't matter, but what matters, what I've been doing the last couple of weeks matters more. I got married 10 days ago, and which is very exciting. My wife is, where is she around the corner? Oh, she's right here. Stand up, Erica. So it's been a very interesting 10 days. So I did something which is very unusual, which is the day I got married, I turned off my phone, I handed it to Will, and I said, I'll see my phone in 10 days. And no phone, totally disconnected from the world. And I have to tell you, as everyone's taking pictures at this moment with your phone, these phones are destroying our humanity. I have a whole, no, they really are. And I usually get to that later in the speech after that, but the first couple days when you don't have your digital pacifier, it's kind of a shock to the system, right? But then you start to realize that there's a whole world outside of this kind of digital cyborg simulation. And then I felt like I was back in the 1990s. Well, not really, because then people were in masks outside. The whole thing was weird. But that's actually what's so nice about being here in the villages. Everyone's like a human being. And so I did a lot of thinking, and I did a lot of writing, and a lot of reading over the last 10 or 12 days, and I'm more convinced than ever that what we're really living through right now is a controlled simulation from people that are in charge that want us to talk about the same things over and over again without actually ever reaching any sort of consensus or agreement of what's actually good for our country. And I mean both parties, by the way. I've become more and more convinced the Republican Party is basically useless. Now, not totally useless, but basically useless. If you're going to be an opposition party, then be an opposition party. Don't just be Democrat light. We know what the Democrats want. We know what they stand for. We know their worldview. And there's 75 million or more of us, we don't know the actual number, that believe that America is more than just a colony to make a bunch of money or a place where you can temporarily come and swoop in, swoop out. This is our home. This is a place where veterans have given everything, and people have built their lives over many generations. And what I think the Republican Party is failing to recognize and realize is that we're running out of time quicker than I think most would ever recognize. And this is not just recognize and realize, but we're on borrowed time. And you all understand this, and Donald Trump understood this, which is why he advocated for such bold and decisive and dramatic action. And if only he had a party around him that would have supported him completely, right? That would have been nice. And so there's a lot of different things I want to talk about and I want to go to. The first is this, and this is an unusual thing for some of you to have to admit. You have to admit that we're basically in occupied territory. Now, this is a thing for a lot of you. It's going to be a hard thing for you to admit. But the 1980s, this is not the case. The 1990s, this is not the case. But they control basically everything. And we let them. We did. And they control the schools, they control the corporations, they control the multimedia, they control the tech companies, they control almost everything. And so we have to think of what we're going to do now as a dissident, as if we were in East Germany. Now, that might be too extreme language for some people, but that's basically where we're at. And people say, well, Charlie, they're not throwing us in camps and all of that. I said, yeah, okay, fine. See, I like these people. They're very smart, very wise. Yeah. And so we know how totalitarianism acts. We know that there's a rhythm to this, right? We know that there's a pattern. We know that power is not a means for these people. It is an end. It's power for power's sake. It's not that they want power to go effectuate some change. No one ever stages themselves into a dictatorship to then give up power. That's not the way it works. And so we have to think of ourselves as a dissident. What does that mean? Well, that means that you are now, in some ways, having to retake the nation you were raised in. Now, this is a hard thing for some conservatives to admit, because some conservatives say, no, we're still the majority. The country's a center-right country. Okay, we have one channel. We have a pillow company and, and like a couple colleges. Pastors are weak-kneed nowadays. We can't fly in an airline without having to be proselytized by their social justice propaganda. You send your child to any college here in the state of Florida that's funded by your tax dollars, and they will learn to hate the country unless they have some sort of pre-existing values. We have some great students here from University of Central Florida, which is supposed to be a good school, and we were just hearing about how he had to endure that indoctrination. This is what we deal with every single day at Turning Point USA. And so we have to think all of a sudden that now we're dissidents. And when have successful dissident strategies worked? Well, here's the tough truth. They usually fail. Really terribly, actually. And so the first wave of dissent is usually met with force. Well, that's exactly what we're seeing right now. And so the people in charge are executing what should be called as a top-down revolution. This is one of the first revolutions ever where the most powerful people are obsessed with crushing the people that don't have any power. I want you to think about that. These are people that Jeff Bezos just bought a $500 million yacht, right? Pretty wealthy guy. And so, but he's obsessed with using his power and his wealth to crush you. What bothers him more than anything else is the lovely lady in the back wearing the MAGA hat. That's an obsession for them. They are not happy. They'll never be happy until all opposition voices are crushed. So, but they're executing a preemptive strike, and we know this, right? It seems as if they're striking first because they're afraid that we're going to actually be able to be successful. And so, and this is exactly why it seems as if some of you are feeling like, why do I feel like I'm metaphorically living through a blitzkrieg? Right? Like the last couple months, I turn around and another person had their apartment raided. I turn around and all of a sudden Delta Airlines is acting like a Democrat super PAC, right? I turn around and our children are learning critical race theory. And the realization is basically this is not a political debate. It's not a coffee shop discussion. This is not the typical politics that a lot of you grew up with. They're playing for keeps this time. And they're going for something more fundamental than just winning the debate. And so a lot of conservatives, I think you all recognize this and understand this, but your leaders do not. Now, your wonderful governor here in this state totally understands it. He gets it. Now, because we're going to get to what to do about it. I'm going to tell you what I'm not. I'm two things that I'm not. I'm not a doom and gloom guy, and I'm not a hopium dealer, okay? Can't stand hopium. It drives me nuts. The amount of misinformation that some of you have been fed by people that should be is immoral. There's nothing that ever happened in Italy, okay? Mike Pence never went to Gitmo. Like, the stuff that I got emailed to me was, like, unbelievable. And I think it actually created a paralysis of the conservative movement that made us less likely to act because we thought there was some master plan. There was no plan, okay? There was no special plan or communication thing. All the message boards were a lie. And I think it was actually designed to make us less likely to make phone calls and knock on doors. I think it was designed to make us think that there was some sort of architecture behind this whole thing, some sort of spiritual energy that would kind of, and I'm a very Christian person, but we were vesting our hopes in some sort of supernatural intervention, not our own activism. And I'm not a hopium dealer. I'm not doom and gloom. I'm a person that deals in reality and reasonable thinking, and I'm also a person of faith, and we'll get to that. So when we look at effective strategies to actually reclaim what should be our own country, we have to think to ourselves, what are they doing really well? And then what are the current Occupy forces' vulnerabilities? So and by the way, I'm sure some media person is recording this. Everything I'm talking about is metaphors. So when I say sabotage, I mean a metaphorical sabotage. Okay, just so we're clear? Because these people is not, So, how would we, those people that want to live in America, that respects our constitutional rights, that believe that God is sovereign, not government is sovereign, that believes that we are a country, not a colony, that wants to be able to control who comes into our country, that wants stuff made in America, not in Wuhan, China, that actually wants to value middle-class work, not just Wall Street's profits, that believes that the church is essential and never should be locked down again. How do we reclaim that country? Well, first, let's see what the left is doing well. First, number one, they don't stop. They don't golf. They don't. They don't have leisure. They're obsessive about, they're pathological. They are. This is their day-to-day mission. Now, some people, and the number one reason that I hear, and I do a lot of these speeches, they say, Charlie, it's hard for me to believe that these people are this Machiavellian. Machiavelli, of course, wrote The Prince, and it's the idea that power is the ultimate pursuit of all human activity. The ends justify the means is the ultimate phrase from The Prince that we get. The answer is yes and then some. So, however sinister or cynical you are towards the motives of the other side, play into all of those. These are not good people, okay? And the big lie that we are taught, which keeps you from acting the way you should act, is this lie. That we all want the same thing, we just have different ways of getting there. How many of you heard this? Your children are being taught this, though. Except when it comes to conservatives, right? They're taught that conservatives want everyone in camps, and they want everyone handcuffed, and they want everyone to be unhappy always. Let me be very clear. We don't want the same thing as the Democrats or the left. They want men in women's restrooms. They want women's sports to be abolished. They want the church to be eliminated. They don't believe in private property. They don't believe in markets. They want another 100 million Central Americans to come into our country. We don't want the same things that they want. So it's actually a very freeing thing, because then we have clarity and we don't have fake agreement. I would rather be very clear about where we disagree at the left, rather than this mushy middle ground where if I have another politician that comes and asks for a vote, they always ask to come on our podcast, and some of them do a good job, and we'll talk about some of them, but most of them say, I really believe that we have more in common in D.C. than, if I have to hear that again, I say, wait, the only thing you guys can agree on is awful trade deals, stupid endless wars, and bringing in millions of people into our country to destroy any sort of meaningful immigration into our country. Like, that's the only thing you guys can agree on. And so, they're pathological in nature. They are. They don't stop. They're good at that. Number two, they define the terms of the debate really well. They put you on defense all the time. Now, this is why. It's because our nature is to be peace-loving, peace-brokering people. A lot of you have probably run and started businesses before. You would not have been able to run and start and grow a business as an activist. I want you to think about this, though. If you were running a local restaurant and your whole mission was to try to divide the community around a certain issue, that would not be good for business. You had to try to be agreeable. If you try to bring your employees in every single day and said, okay, you go over here a Republican, you go over here a Democrat, you wouldn't be able to run a business that way. So you try to find commonality and values for a assumed mission. So it's in your nature, same when you build a family or run a church. So our nature as conservatives is trying to find consensus. Their nature is the exact opposite. Their nature, by definition, is not to build. They haven't built anything in their life, ever. These people have built nothing. They've only destroyed. They're parasites. They take over everything. The Boy Scouts, destroyed. Delta Airlines, destroyed. Coca-Cola, destroyed. Like every classical music, they've destroyed. Math, they've destroyed. Every major institution, they find something that works that was built by conservatives or Westerners, and they take it over with almost a parasitic attitude under these false promises of utopianism and diversity and tolerance and acceptance until all of a sudden it becomes an unrecognizable institution. And they prey on your worst impulses. Because we want to be peace-loving people, and we should be. But we should never sacrifice this false promise of peace and compromise truth. Let me be very clear. And so what we do is we say, you know what, maybe I should be more tolerant. Maybe I should be more accepting. And so then they said, aha, we're going to win. Because then before you know it, they say you're an awful person if you don't want some 55-year-old guy with a beard showering with your daughter. Tolerance, right? Because if you have tolerance and no truth, well then, who's to say what the guardrails are for society, right? If all of a sudden you accept all things always with no bearing, with no compass, with no ability to be able to decipher good from evil, well then we should just be accepting of those. Because diversity is our strength, isn't it? That's what we're told. Diversity can be a strength, could also be a weakness. I want you, and I'll make an argument, and this is like a political thought crime, so like the thought police is going to come in when I say this, which is exactly why I want to say it. Could anyone run a sports team on diversity? Not racial diversity, I'm talking about diversity of opinion. You could not run the Tampa Bay Buccaneers based on diversity of opinion. It requires uniformity. It requires precision. It requires agreement, commonality. If all of a sudden the receiver said, Rob Gronkowski comes up, he's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just run, straight down the field. He's like, no, we're not doing that. Well, diversity is our strength, Tom Brady. I'm sorry. It'd be like he kicked off the team. He's like, no, in order for that mission to be a successful enterprise, by definition, you need some sort of hierarchy and agreement and a common mission and goal. Now, of course, some diversity, of course, can be a strength. Ideological diversity at times is very healthy, especially when people are young. Racial diversity, linguistic diversity. But just to pathologically accept it, yes, all diversity, all the time, no matter what the mission we're trying to do is always good, because it's my truth. Well, then you have chaos. It's almost as if they want that. So they're really good at setting the terms of the debate. And the third thing is this, and there's a whole list of things they do well. Then I'm going to get to things they don't do well, because we have to think of it as dissidents, right? We have to have a plan of sabotage, because I'm not just going to go here and tell you everything that's wrong. We're going to launch a plan together of how we're going to do this, because we have to go over their vulnerabilities. The last strength is this. It kind of goes to the second one. And this is how they were able to pull off the greatest scam, I think, in the last 100 years, which is the lockdowns because of the virus. The virus is a very real thing. The lockdowns was a total scam. And we played along. Here's why. Let me tell you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Here's why. And I could go through the cost of the lockdowns, from the suicides to the alcoholism. You guys don't really feel it here because you have a wonderful governor. You go to California. And, yeah, thank you. And they have worse statistics on every single imaginable point of calculation versus Florida. And they still have not fully opened, just so we're clear. And you guys opened in May of last year. But here's the thing that they're really good at. And this is right out of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, and they have perfected it. So just so if you don't know Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, I'm sure you've had speakers come through and talk to you about it. I happen to know it very well because I'm not just a podcaster and a radio show host. I do those things passionately. We at Turning Point USA are actually on the front lines doing this. We're organizing high school and college groups. We're actually doing the work every single day, right? So we're experiencing this. So let me tell you that, thank you, that I think rule number 8, rule number 4 is keep the pressure on. That's the one that we talked about. But this is the one that we have to take very seriously. They use your value system against you. So I want you to think of how were they able to persuade us to lock down the country? It's not about you, it's about your grandmother. Right? It's not go get vaccinated, not because of you, but you might end up being a mass murderer. Now, what are they really actually doing here? Now, on the surface, now we're going to get into a little morality and philosophy because this is how we just played into this. On the surface, it's like, they're playing on our best instincts. They know that every person, no, they aren't. They're playing on your guilt. That's not playing on, they are playing on you having to live the rest of your life for maybe committing a mass murder in the villages. Whatever. Like whatever they're doing. Like whatever they're trying to do. The point is that they're trying to put you in a position to be controlled by one of the ultimate purposes of human control, which is guilt. What is the whole BLM Incorporated thing about? White guilt. What is the white liberal Nantucket redistribution, wealthy liberal thing? Income guilt of money you didn't earn. My favorite word in the English language is earn. My favorite word. So when you have a generation that has earned very little, a lot given to them, and there's some things that, quite honestly, they've been used and abused on. I'll get into that. Then all of a sudden, they're not playing on our best intentions, they're playing on our guilt, and we have a society that does not know how to deal with guilt. We have a society that does not, now, this is where the hyper-secularization of a country comes in. You see, we as Christians, we actually have a playbook on how to deal with guilt. We know how to do that. For example, if you wronged somebody individually, you go to that person. It says very clearly in the scriptures to do that. And you ask for forgiveness, and then you go to your Creator. And then you read the word, and you pray for forgiveness, and it will be granted to you, and then you are freed from the guilt of whatever you did. If that is a genuine exercise, right? Not just going through the motions. But if all of a sudden you believe there's no God, and the state is salvation, what wouldn't you do to alleviate yourself from walking around with the belief of having guilt? We all know how big that feeling of guilt is. It's dominating, isn't it? You ever do something that you just wish you wouldn't have done, and you just say to yourself, and we all had those moments in our life. Of course we did. I wish I would have. I feel terrible. I'll do anything to make this right. So they use a society's inability to deal with guilt as a way to control you. As a byproduct of how we've become more secular. A byproduct of not believing in a creator, or a byproduct of feeling guilty if you have any form of success, which is the opposite of that. That if you have money, you only got it because you were doing a Bonnie and Clyde routine. If you have money, you only did it because you went around to banks and extorting people. You didn't build a business. You didn't wake up at 5 a.m. You didn't go raise those 6 people. No. You did that only because you're a robber baron. And unfortunately, some people still believe that. Not just some people, a lot of people. And so the left knows this. So I really believe a lot of what we deal with right now, and now let me be very clear, if you have done something wrong that is deserving of you to feel guilty, then that is a natural, in fact, a healthy feeling. And I would argue that you have a biblical exercise, as I mentioned, to go through that will hopefully shape you and change you. But if your mere existence, your skin color, all of a sudden makes you feel guilty, then you have been propagandized by people that wish to destroy the country. You see, again, this is a level deeper that you won't always see this on television because everyone's just screaming at each other about absolutely nothing, right? I just get so bored with just watching most of the kind of smear merchants on like MSNBC. It's awful. This is really what's happening here, is that people are actually afraid of having to walk around with not saying, I made the independent decision to whatever, open my business or send my kid to school, it's like, no, I'm not going to do something because I don't want to have to live with the consequence, even though your intentions might have been very, very good for doing whatever that might be. Okay. So the left does other things well. They're very good in the arts. They're very creative. And they also, we all know the other things they're good at. I mean, they're good at trying, not just good at trying, they're very, very effective at persuading people in positions that matter, whether it be teachers or priests or pastors, that their daily mission should be one of a social activist, right? So they're very good at creating infantry troops. Okay, what are their vulnerabilities? That's an interesting thing, right? When was the last time you heard a speaker come up and say, here's what the left is bad at and here's what we can do about it? Because they're not good at everything. So here's what we're bad at, okay? We think, not you, it's the 1980s, okay? And this stuff like all works in these beautiful cycles. That's a bunch of nonsense, okay? Here's also what we're bad at. We look that everyone is in their better angels. Oh, that Chuck Schumer, he's going to turn the corner, you know? He's going to, right? You know, but not all of you, the enlightened folk of the world, right? But I'm talking about the general. But there is a lot of that, right? So what the left is bad at, okay, here's what they're really bad at. They cannot in any way, shape, or form ever withstand mockery or honest criticism. They can't. It is the fatal flaw against a tyrant and a despot. This is why every single person that has ever been in an authoritarian position, totalitarian position, has always first criminalized the comedians, the journalists, and the truth tellers. Always. You go back to Roman consul Cicero, famously had his head taken off at his own estate because he wrote a little bit too, let's just say, colorfully about the Roman rulers of the time, including Mark Antony. You could go through Socrates to eventually the dictators who employed the strategy of Napoleon, to Joseph Stalin, to Benito Mussolini. So what does that mean for all of you? Does that mean we all have to go become comedians? Well, sort of, but, and I mean this this is such an obvious thing, which is why I'm so supportive of Greg Gutfeld, moving into the 11 o'clock. We are not making fun of these people enough. We're not. No, and some, by the way, God has a great sense of humor. There's a great book called Humor in the Bible. It's a phenomenal book. I encourage you all to look. It takes obviously a very well-trained eye to find it, because we're so, in a good way, I would say, accustomed to reading the Bible so seriously, and we should, that we kind of sometimes miss the ironic sense of some of the sense of humor in the Bible. So we're not making fun of these people enough. So let me give you an example. Joe Biden's the first person ever to fall upstairs. I've never seen it before. Now, I should probably stop here because it is the Villages, but so I'll just stop. But I'll continue one more. I've never seen a human being hit a golf ball backwards. Have you seen this? The new video that just came out, he actually hit it backwards. He's the only human leader that right now thinks you can get a communicable disease through Zoom. He wears a mask on a Skype Zoom call. It's true. Now, I am not a stand-up comic by any means. I do 3 hours of radio every day. I try to be entertaining, right? So, another example, right? So, again, humor is amazing because humor is rooted in truth. You laugh because something is true, right? And so this whole Israel thing is happening right now. I'm very pro-Israel. I'm unapologetic about it. I've visited multiple times. We love Israel. And I love the fact that they're unapologetic about being a home for the Jewish people. I love the fact that a nation actually says very clearly what they stand for. They make no means about it. And by the way, we could learn something from Israel, which is they know that if they give an inch to the Arabs, they're done. And so they have an iron dome. The conservatives need an iron dome, right? We need an iron dome. We're metaphorical, of course, whatever. So, which is, how are we going to defend ourselves against people that wish to wipe us off the map, right? Which is a real thing. So, anyway, there's this thing with the AP Associated Press, and they happen to be sharing a building with Hamas, right? An office. I could just see them walking into the elevator like, oh, what floor? 5. So what do you do? I kill Jews. What do you do? Oh, yeah, I report stories. Yeah, okay. Same time tomorrow, right? Yeah, sure. I mean, we're supposed to believe the Associated Press didn't know they were sharing a building with one of the leading terrorist organizations on the planet. It's laughable because they think that they're above any sort of criticism, and that's part of what we have to get at here, right? Which we have to get even more open and louder and more direct at mocking the people in charge, because they do not, in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion, they have not earned, remember my favorite word, earned your respect. Let me say that again. They have not earned it. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a jerk about it. You have to say things that are untrue, but I'm also, excuse me while I kind of have a little less of a reservation when these people are trying to pathologically destroy Western civilization, and all they do is try to attack our value system every single day. So that's one of their huge weaknesses. Number two, what's the other weakness of the left? They're paranoid all the time. Think about this. It's a huge weakness of theirs. I have never seen in my life, maybe you have, such unhappy winners. Right? These people won. They're screaming. Wear a mask. What? You won. Like, just calm down a little bit. You control the nuclear arsenal. Just take a day. You're a terrible person. Get vaccinated. They're angrier than us. We happen to be smiling more and finding joy in the little moments. They're like, we're behind schedule. The revolution was never supposed to be this hard. And by the way, they're right. They lost a lot. The septuagenarians that hate the country, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and others, they actually now think this is why Joe Biden's acting in such a decisive way. And I have a contrarian theory. Yeah, decisive. He's actually extraordinarily radical, more than Obama. In fact, in some ways, I miss Obama, and I'll tell you why I miss Obama, because Obama was a narcissist, and Obama actually cared what conservatives said about him. I'll get to that in a second. Joe Biden doesn't care because he doesn't know what anyone says about him, right? And so, it's just a big difference, right? And so, but in some ways, we actually used Obama's narcissism against him, which actually slowed down some of the radicalism towards the latter end of his presidency. I know that's somewhat of a contrarian view, but I could prove it through legislative action. But so they're always paranoid. And we know this. This is something that is not anything new. When people are in power, the worst thing that could possibly happen to them is losing that power. They obsess over it. They think of everything that they do is about keeping and preserving that power. Everything. So we have to play into their paranoia. We have to make them act in a way that would otherwise not be very disciplined. And the third thing is this, that they don't do well, which just happens to be the greatest vulnerability for them and the greatest asset for us, is they happen to be selling a pile of garbage to the American people. They actually happen to be trying to persuade a wealthy, rather reasonable, I don't know, but I guess reasonable at times country, I'd say 50 to 55% country, hope, that this such a minority of a minority view of the world is now going to be the only way to govern. That is not a sustainable way. So they basically are saying, okay, we're going to be in power not by persuasion, but by suffocation. Like we don't care about changing your mind. We care about bullying you and intimidating you, and if we have to change the voting laws to do that through H.R. 1, that is what we are going to do. So be it. We are going to waterboard our way to victory. Now, that would work if this was France. And I mean that because they're a straight democracy, right? We're in power. We're going to use our power, sit down and shut up. And that's what they've done in France. There is no conservative party in France. They've done it. There is no conservative party. There's been some attempts, and they're almost never successful. Same could be said in Germany, right? There's like a 15%, maybe. Same in Italy. And there's some nationalists that come to power that have some good ideas on immigration, but it's not even close to the same sort of views that we have as conservative. Like, their conservative party is like Hillary Clinton Democrats, just so you know. That's how much they've moved the Overton window. Same in like Boris Johnson, who's like the conservative, he's like Chuck Schumer. No, seriously, and he is a wimp. He's a terrible prime minister. But then you have Jeremy Corbyn, who's like Bernie Sanders. Like, so their political debate is basically like what form of massive government, low freedom, no natural rights, mega corporation type of way you want to live under, right? And so the Democrats' play and the left's play is a very risky one. And this might be their greatest vulnerability. On top of their inability to accept mockery, their inability to be able to have a calm mind. It's very hard to build big things when you're paranoid. You guys all know this. Paranoia does not lend yourself to very significant endeavors. You have a tendency to fail, to falter, to make mistakes. The biggest thing is they don't have truth. And they're selling things that are, once implemented, largely unpopular. So what do we do about that? We know their vulnerabilities. Here, it's so simple. We have to look, again, as dissidents, say, wow, okay, so we have the best ideas, okay. They can't stand when they lose power, okay. And they can't stand when they get criticized, mocked, or pulled out into the public sphere. Maybe we should do something about all those three things. Like number one, we should play decisive offense at anywhere that Republicans or conservatives have power in this country. Now, the power word is a very, very complicated word for conservatives. We don't like it. We think that power can be abused. Of course it can be abused. But how does one get power in a state government? You get voted into power. And if you're not going to do anything with the power that the voters have given you, to all of a sudden push back against this sort of totalitarian blitzkrieg, then you're a worthless Republican, in my opinion. And that's why Ron DeSantis has done such an amazing job in this state in every single way imaginable. And so, not every state is like Florida. You guys know this. States that are more conservative than Florida are not doing anything close to what your governor has. And the state legislature deserves a lot of credit here in this state, a lot of credit, because they've been putting a lot of bills. And they don't get enough credit, I think. And so, for example, no critical race theory. Now, we need to expand that more in this state, but it's a good start, right? It's also no vaccine passports, no mandatory vaccinations, opening the state of Florida. These are very, very good and healthy things that have been happening here. And it's playing offense. Do you notice the Democrats in this state are now constantly on defense? They always have to explain why Ron DeSantis, the popular governor, is terrible, right? And you guys feel like you have the wind at your back when you talk about our governor here, right? And I am a Florida resident, by the way, so I could talk about our governor. And so I fled Illinois so quickly you wouldn't believe it. And so, but that should be replicated all across the country, right? All of a sudden, where we have reasonable popular positions, we're like, no, we're going to set the terms of debate. Where we are going to say that we do not believe that men with beards should be able to shower with women in women's locker rooms. We're also going to even go a step further, where we're going to mandate constitutional curriculum in every single school across the country. We want our kids to love America again. And so, all of a sudden, that kind of offensive strategy starts to put yourself in a position where they have to explain away why we don't want that. They're so good at this on the national level, and our national party has no idea what they're doing. So we have 27 state legislatures and states and governors that we control across the country. That's a lot of power that has been given to us. So you might feel like you've lost everything, right? But no, voters keep on showing up and being like, please, Republicans, protect my country. I remember when we used to talk nicely about Pearl Harbor, please protect our country. I remember when my grandfather served in World War II, please protect my country. I remember when we used to have celebrations on July 4th, not protests, please protect my country. That's what Republicans are really saying when they show up to the voting booth. They don't go vote for lower corporate taxes. No one cares about that stuff. That's short-term business profit maximization. It's somewhat helpful for the well-being of the country. That is not what's going to save us. It's not. And so instead we have to look at this as something that is not just winnable, but we really don't have a choice but not to win at this moment. Now, they are playing it so aggressively, and they're trying in every way, shape, or form to kind of smoke us out and to flank us out. This is probably their fourth biggest vulnerability, is they're paranoid, but some of them feel like they've got us, just so you understand. Some of them feel like it's over. They've played us. They know they're never going to lose. And as long as we can kind of keep that Trump guy golfing at Mar-a-Lago, now they are afraid of Trump, but they're really afraid of what Trump was able to bring to the popular stage. And someone has my book. And let me tell you what that is, and then we'll get to questions. And Trump opened a beast. And he opened up a beast that challenges the entrenched political class in a way that no one ever has. And I don't think he'll ever get proper credit for this. And I don't even know if he seeks the credit for that, which, again, is the great irony of the New York Times, Trump not seeking credit for something, which is actually true because he opened up this enlightenment, and myself included, where that we were governed by Republicrats and Democrats that refused to talk about 3 issues that were really affecting all of you on a very deeply personal level, which is mass immigration, trade, and endless wars. And those are the 3 things that both parties always agreed on. And that it's a good thing that we're bringing in 40 million people a year from Nicaragua. Like, really? Is that a good thing? Like, what about wages going down? What about the fact that we have more Spanish speakers in California than English speakers? What about the fact that natural-born American birth rate is going down? Is that a good thing? Always a good thing? And then how about the cheap product craze? How about the fact that we have more piles of plastic than we know what to do with in this country? And clinics full of people trying to recover from opioids. So this great deal that we were brokered by Republicans is, okay, we're going to shut down your factories, bring in a bunch of pills, and you're going to like it because all of a sudden you're going to have garages full of stuff you're never going to use, that you don't remember you own, that you're going to have a fire sale at one moment, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll get a self-storage unit you can put it in. That was the grand bargain that we were sold. And Donald Trump comes onto the scene as like, all of this is it's a scam, the whole thing. And he does it in the way that only he can do it because he got your attention while doing it. This is what made him different than some of the leaders that talked about this stuff before. It was Donald Trump, right? The ultimate promoter. And instead of talking about how wonderful it was that we were occupying Afghanistan, instead of talking about how wonderful it was that we have piles of, T-shirts that we have that we have no connection to, he was criticizing the core belief that was the money flow of Washington, D.C., which was uninterrupted trade with China, which was mass migration and the war industry. Those are the 3 things you are not allowed to talk about. Like school choice, fine, you can kind of talk about that as a Republican, right? That's like comfortable. And I'm in favor of school choice, obviously. I run an organization that advocates for it. But he went straight to the core. And then they disguised their criticism of him as being a moral indictment of his tweets and his behavior and whatever. What they really hated and what they really feared was that the Republican Party was going to become a party that cared much more about the nation of America than Goldman Sachs profits. That cared much more about whether or not your children had a nation to live in than whether or not Amazon was building another worthless, senseless distribution center in Central Florida. And that scared them like you can't believe. So they think they're going to win if they can quarantine those ideas in Mar-a-Lago. They know that if those ideas get reintroduced on a national stage and the Republican Party articulates it, I'm talking about 60, 70, 80% type election victories. Because we're now talking about broad consensus. All of a sudden, you are now agreeing with some of the people on the Bernie Sanders left. You know what? Maybe it's not a good thing that Jeff Bezos has $165 billion. I don't. And I'm a conservative. I love markets. I don't like oligarchs. I think it's disgusting. And I think we as conservatives should say that. And it's also disgusting what he does with his money. He buys the Washington Post so that you can get your Apple News notifications of some ridiculously, overly. I don't think that's a conservative value. And they're afraid because that's popular. Because at the very fundamental level, the American Revolution was about protecting the small against the large. And it was protecting the things that matter against the things that were threatening those things that mattered. And so what does that look like for all of us? Well, first of all, it's already happening, thankfully, because of people like you that have not given up and you're still assembling and you're still gathering, you're still doing this, which is whether or not Trump runs again in 2024. And I have no inside information all about that. I really don't. And I actually don't think it matters as much as whether or not we're going to be meeting here in 4 years and we're going to be a conservative movement about things that actually matter. That we're not going to keep on just exchanging the same sort of platitudes that happened like when Jeb Bush ran. And fine, like it's not about Jeb. I just happen to mention him because he was the perfect embodiment of just like the most boring trading ideas. Like that's not, okay, 3% GDP growth. Fine, okay. Wealth created. But for whom and at what cost? Are families getting rebuilt? Is the divorce rate going down? Are opioid deaths going down? Is teen suicide going down? Are we having more abortions or less abortion? Is church attendance going up? Do more people believe in God? Is secularism the new religion? Are our kids being taught to hate the country? I care much more about those questions than whether or not we have 3% GDP growth. I care much more about what the fabric of the nation is, and you should too. And so that's their final vulnerability, which is the actual ideas themselves. And so let me close with this kind of framing of the two different economic classes and where you are on the right, we're on the right side of this one. And this is their big fear. They're afraid that people like me and our podcast and our radio show and you guys are going to start to all of a sudden become aware of this. You're going to demand it of your leaders. And all of a sudden the Republican Party, if it does its job, is going to become a 65, 70% popular party because of its ideas, which is there's two groups of people in the country. And we've seen this happen over the last year. And neither is necessarily good or bad, but I would argue that one gets abused at the expense of the other. There's one sector of the economy which is small but rich and powerful, called the Zoom and the Skype class. There are people that open up their laptop because they're able to open up their laptop to go to work. They didn't have to leave their house much to be able to make a living in the last year. Again, there's nothing necessarily bad about this. But those people tend to have a contempt for the people that actually make the mechanical and the material economy go, the muscular class in America. And there's 115 million people that are in the muscular class in America. 115 million people. Those people used to be almost all Democrats. Those people they're the ones that have to wear a mask all day long because of some stupid mandate from some governor, but they keep on doing it because they want to make sure that your boxes keep on getting delivered, that you can get an Uber at a moment's notice, that you can get a meal if you want at a local restaurant. They're the ones that have really had to labor in the last year. They're the carpenters and the welders. They're the electricians and the police officers. And so the Zoom and the Skype class is trying to crush that muscular class. But all of a sudden, for the first time ever, that muscular class in all sorts of racial backgrounds, Hispanic especially, black and white working class, is all moving in this direction of the Republican Party. And what many of our leaders have not stopped to recognize, some have, most haven't, is why. Well, Donald Trump started what should be the most successful political movement in the modern era, which is a restoration of this beautiful republic of people that do not own a lot, people that don't have multiple homes, but they are rich in their soul and their spirit and their desires and their ambitions. And isn't that what America has always been? It's not about how big your yacht is. Like, screw you, Jeff Bezos. Like, we'll take that yacht from you in a second, okay? Seriously. And we should be unafraid about saying that. Because what I care about more than anything else is whether or not the muscular class, the person that wants to have 4 children and love their country and serve their country, probably as a veteran, whether or not they can still exist in the American promise. And that's exactly what the conservative movement should stand for. So, as we look at ourselves as dissidents, what does that all mean? That means we have to know why we believe what we believe. We have to know that we actually have the wind in our back right now, that they're representing an ever-increasingly radical agenda of an angry 0.1% that screams, but they have no constituency. But we represent what is going to actually be successful in the ballot box. Middle-class work, family formation, not just freedom and liberty, but something even more deeper and more beautiful than that. And so I guess our call to action here tonight is that has to manifest in a lot of different ways. And we'll do some questions here about school boards. I didn't even talk that much about education, which is a huge piece of this, obviously. But this was really weighing on me to share with you, which is it's no longer just a spectator type activity. Let me tell you,
Your telegrams all the time, everywhere. Now you haven't been around for 10 days. Who's been posting for you?
my team.
I'm joking with you, of course.
Thank you.
I'm sure.
Help if we get the air turned down a little bit. It's getting warm in here. You know how to do that?
Okay, we'll keep going, guys. Just keep the attention up here. Thank you, guys. So it's about being involved in the fight, not just a spectator. And so let me tell you my least favorite question that I get. My least favorite question I get is when people say, "So Charlie, how's it going out there? How's it going?" Like I'm some sort of gladiator in a, like it's Maximus or something. And I think to myself, there's nothing special about me. There isn't. I didn't go to college. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's probably the only thing that's special. But all of you guys could be doing this. I'm going to say that again. All of you guys could be doing this. I don't have a PhD from Harvard. I didn't split the atom. I work really hard and I care about the country. And maybe this is not built for you, but what do you mean, how's it going out there? Like, what I want to hear is, Charlie, I'm laboring beside you, man. I got death threats from being involved in my school board meeting. I got signs being taken off my house. I'm praying for you every day. It's hard, isn't it, Charlie? And I want to look at people's eyes and say, you know what? It is. But we're in it together. I'm not getting that all the time. I get the spectator conservatism. That's not going to be sustainable. It's got to be in the fight. It's the man in the arena that matters. And as we look to launch that successful, metaphorical, dissident sabotage campaign, it's going to take every single one of us. So thank you, and let's do some questions. Thank you, guys.
I project really well. Okay, good. Hey, did y'all enjoy this guy? Hey. Would you like to see him come back again? I think he's doing something. They like you, Charlie. I mean, you know, they do, man. I tell you. Okay, we got time. You know, I got several people text me some questions. But everybody sit down one time, please. I saw a couple of hands, and I see the gentleman here, but let me go one right here, then 2, 3, 4. Okay, so one right here, lady. Real loud, please.
Yes. I'm a little confused because I hear the same congressman and senator on the TV talking about our values, okay? I don't hear from the other Republicans. I know a lot of them are rhinos, okay? And my fear is, who, when it comes time for me to vote, okay, what do we do? And I don't know where I stand right now and how I should come, because I'm definitely not voting Democrat, but I don't want to vote for some of these Republicans.
You from Brooklyn? Yeah? So you're right. I share that concern. Look, I'm not ever saying you should vote for Democrat. There is a moral case. Let me be very clear. To vote for the lesser of two evils. There is a moral case. This is why I got so involved in the Georgia runoff. That some people say, I don't like voting for the lesser of two evils. Now, there's so many, and there's beautiful moral literature written about this from C.S. Lewis on downwards, where if you're worried about trying to find the divine and the perfect, then you'll be voting on, you know, the coming of Christ. Like, that's about it, right? So you're always going to be voting for the lesser of two evils, always. Now, where the real action has to happen, though, is in the primaries, then, is who you're going to support. Now, let me just give you a great example of this. And I think this will actually give you some concrete action of how primaries matter. So in 2016-17, I got to know a certain congressman from Florida very, very well, and he was thinking about running for governor. Now, some of you might remember the 2018 Florida governor's race, but I want you to think about the 2018 Florida primary for a second. It was a very well-funded, pretty good guy, honestly, Adam Putnam. I believe his first name was Adam, right? Nothing necessarily wrong with him, but definitely more of an establishment pick, right? I think that's a fair thing to say. And was kind of in that mold of just kind of, we're going to do things like we've always done them in Florida. And someone entered the field that was just basically known as being the #1 critic of the Mueller investigation, Ron DeSantis, from the northeastern part of Florida. And he was down in the first public poll by, I think, 52 points. Was that about right? 52 points. And so this story's not always told, right? I mean, you guys lived through it, but it's just important to remember. And that primary ended up being incredibly consequential. Now, we don't know the governor that Adam Putnam would have been, but we know what we have now. And we know that it's not like any other governor across the country. Let me just say here, Adam Putnam reminds me more of like a Brian Kemp. Now, if you like Brian Kemp, then maybe this doesn't resonate with you. Not a fan, right? And so, for a variety of reasons. So how did that change? Well, Donald Trump got into the primary. He got very, very involved, and obviously Ron DeSantis went up significantly. So that's where the primaries start to matter a lot, right? That's where those primary campaigns that are launched. And I could go through chapter and verse. Senator Ted Cruz in his primary campaign in Texas was running up against, nothing against these people. I'm just saying that we know what we have, where that primary campaign went all of a sudden where you have a very outspoken conservative you otherwise wouldn't have. Primaries matter a lot, everybody. They matter in candidate selection. They matter in showing up to those events. And so let me just say that. The other thing is this, which is the voting and the politics is actually not the most important thing you guys should all be focused on. It's not. The other stuff that matters even more than that is the local type governmental races. And so can anyone here tell me every single school board member here in this local area? You know them? That's good. Well, so let me just give you a little bit of a challenge. The fact that we don't know our school board members here in this very involved political community, this is why we've lost the country. And every hand should be going up. Yeah, it's Susie, Tom, I had breakfast with them, I know them, I email them all the time. It's all out there, guys. It's so easy. Now, to just offer a little bit of grace, I get it. This is not your full-time job. You're like, no, I'm retired, I got other stuff to do than worrying about school board. Now we know what's actually been happening, though. Well, the school board races is where all this stuff, it's where critical race theory is being implemented. And by the way, they test it on 7th graders and then they give it to Marines. You think I'm kidding? No, meaning like they test it on high school kids and then they give it to, the U.S. Army, like the United States military. And like, God bless our military for everything that they do. But the point is like, this stuff gets tried out in the schools, and if you think that it's like, oh, it's just the kids, it doesn't matter, you guys know that. You guys know that if we do not contest and fight on those local issues, they're going to spread. So I want to come back here next year and ask that question, and every hand goes up, and everyone says, I know all of our school board members. I know what they do. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a great question. I've been one of the most outspoken people to try to factually figure out what actually happened in this last election. I think some of the conversation has been unhelpful. The machines is an unknown thing to me. Let me be very clear. The machines is unknown. I don't know if there's anything around the Dominion thing or not. I really don't. That's going to be figured out in a lot of civil suits, by the way, when people are going to have to be forced with discovery. I think it's all been kind of a distraction. What we know is the real problem, which is it's not actually what happens on voting day. It's voter registration fraud. It is the voting rolls themselves. And we know these are flawed. Every single analysis of these voting rolls show that there's dead people, people that have moved. In my opinion, that they tried to get us off that issue into things that were harder to prove than like, no. There are people that are deceased on the voter rolls in Arizona that shows that a ballot actually went in. And now I think we're finally getting back to that. But I also think that there might have been some very well-crafted, very sneaky people that tried to insert things that they knew were false into kind of conservative literature that all of a sudden we started talking about that seemed compelling to discredit the entire question around voter integrity. And again, like for example, the thing that Mike Pence was in Gitmo standing trial. I probably got 200 emails about this in one day on our podcast. And then I was like, oh my goodness, there's somebody spreading this stuff, right? There has to be. I'll give you another one. Back in December, where I got probably 50 emails in like an hour. They're like, Charlie, the president's in Texas right now. I said, no, he's not. And they said, oh, you don't know. I said, okay, I hate to like pull this card. I actually just saw him. Like, I know where he is. Like, he's not in Texas, okay? Like, you're lying to us. And I realized, like, there's a lot of misinformation out there, guys. There is. And some of it is not being pushed by conservatives, being pushed by people that I think sometimes want us to. So I have been super disciplined in how we've covered this. And I encourage all of you, if you're interested, we are on the ground in Phoenix. We're headquartered in Phoenix. We do 2 podcasts a day, and we're covering it very intently. And I'm going to do a shameless plug in a second, so you have to forgive me, if that's okay. Okay, yeah. We're actually following the information that's going into these audits. I don't know what we'll find. I think the bigger question, and again, this is where I think all the money should be focused, we need $100 million to go sue to clean the voter rolls in America. That is the best money I think that we could spend. And that's what Ron DeSantis did here in Florida when he got to be governor. He started to clean up these voter rolls. And so, how old are you? 12. That's a great age. So I'm going to need your help in a minute, okay? So everyone, as I mentioned, I do 2 podcasts a day. And it's totally free of charge to subscribe to the Charlie. Anyone listen to our podcast? Thank you. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. So, as you guys know, that there's big tech censorship like you wouldn't believe. So a way to help me and help us in our program, we're also now on over 100 radio stations. We just took over the Rush slot in New York City, which we're very, very honored. And so we're doing a lot. And God bless Rush for everything he did to our country. It's absolutely amazing. Okay, go ahead. No, so let me close the tech thing on kind of close the loop on that, because you're right. So the tech issue is one of the biggest issues, and it's going to be going down as one of the greatest failures of the Republican Party, the fact we didn't break up these tech companies when we controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency. We should have broken them up, smashed them into pieces. And so if you guys are interested, it would bless us. Every single one of your smartphones, you guys can subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast. Every phone has a podcast app. And you're like, what? My 12-year-old friend, what's your name? Luke can probably guide you through that very easily. So if you guys have any questions, right, Luke? You can help? Okay, very good. And so, but no, every phone has it. I would appreciate it. The final thing is this. Go to Rumble, RUMBLE.com. No more YouTube. Rumble, RUMBLE.com. Let me say that again, RUMBLE.com. Parler's coming back online, and there will be a search engine this summer or early fall that we're working on very hard to go after Google on search. And so there's some competitors coming. Now, it's gonna be rocky, but it's coming. Sorry, go ahead.
One last question. Chris cares. What time we got to be out of here? 9. We got to take the chairs up and stuff. Okay. He's willing. If y'all want to stay, you may want to stay 2 more minutes. You'd like to dance? All right. He said he'd stay a few more minutes. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a convention of states representative, or?
Yeah, we did, and he's sitting. Bob's in the back.
Yeah, so I'm supportive of the Liberty Amendments, the Convention of States. I don't know if Mark Meckler is still running that or not. Okay, I think he did something with Parler for a minute. Very supportive of that, and but I'm not sure how realistic it is to implement it because some of these states seem to be dragging their feet. But I love any and all constitutional type provisions that we have. So just so you guys know, Convention of States, I believe it's Article 5 or Article 6. I could be wrong. It's right there in the Constitution that says that the states may convene a constitutional convention, of which it could actually be a check on a runaway federal government. And so I'm very supportive of that. I do want to get back to this other point where you said, put this guy in jail, put this in jail. Look, you know, they have been unafraid to weaponize state attorney generals against conservatives. And yet, I'm not arguing weaponization, of course not. But why wouldn't the Republican attorney general of Arkansas go after Hunter Biden and say, you know what, you're going to raid Rudy Giuliani's apartment as if he's some sort of mob boss? I'm not saying, I don't know if Rudy did something wrong or not. He's America's mayor. He was the lawyer to the president. You don't need a 6 a.m. raid to go after Rudy Giuliani. Like, no, that's wrong. I don't care who you are. That is not the way we do things in this country. And so, and you show me the man, I'll show you the crime, okay? That's the way this stuff works now. Like, okay, we're going to dissect your life there. The point is that they're not going to stop unless it is met with equal and opposite force from whatever law enforcement is. But for whatever reason, that's something that conservatives don't want to do. And I'm not even saying weaponizing or anything. I'm talking about just the rule of law of people that are so flagrantly broke it. For example, when these people lie in front of Congress, how are they able to get away with that? You know, they throw conservatives in jail for just having a paperwork error. That's basically why they raided Rudy Giuliani's apartment. They're saying, okay, you were lobbying for someone, which is unproven, not sourced, and you didn't fill out the correct paperwork. That's worth getting federal agents to kick down a door. Meanwhile, Rudy is offering his phone saying that I have compromising information on Hunter Biden, and they don't want it. Again, I am not saying that Rudy did nothing wrong. I don't know that. No one knows that. What I am saying, though, is that we are entering a totalitarian moment. And if the other side thinks that there is no cost to this sort of behavior, they're just getting warmed up.
Concerning the mask about, Charlie, thank you so much. I love everything you have said. Be bold, be brave, do something more. The Democrats have been feeding us. Follow the CDC. Hey, guidelines. So when my approach, when I go into establishments now and somebody's chasing me around with a mask, I am telling them, you know what? This is what the CDC has put out. These are the guidelines, and I'm not wearing a mask. And I use that.
We live in Florida. We got a lot of hands. So you were first. So yeah, yes, sir. Then we'll come back.
Turning Point USA, I'm so pleased to expand that to high schools. We've got 10 high schools in Seminole County. One of them has a club. I'm making a commitment to put a club in all the other 9 high schools. Do you know we need some models around the country that have been especially effective in high schools, Turning Point USA, that we could maybe borrow some great ideas from and bring those to Seminole County.
So let me just tell you more about Turning Point. Again, we're always limited on time, right? So I started Turning Point. Yeah, that's good. It's getting a little late, but no. So I started Turning Point 9 years ago in June, and never went to college with nothing, no money, no connections, no idea what I was doing, just great mentors that wanted to save the country. And in 9 years, we are now on thousands of high school and college campuses across the country, well over 150 people on our full-time staff. We have some of our Turning Point leaders right here. Stand up, please. Any of our Turning Point leaders here, please stand up. They do such a great job. Terrific. And so We have over 150 full-time people on our staff. We reach millions of people every single day on digital social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. You've probably seen a lot of the work we do. We have the biggest events you can imagine, Young Women's Leadership Summit. We have our Student Action Summit coming in Tampa. We'll have probably 5,000 students there in Tampa coming up. That's some of our posters that we have, which are kind of fun. And so it's very good. And so there you go. And so you can get them. Yeah, we give the activism materials. TPUSA.com is you can get them. And so we're a 501c3 nonprofit. I'm not here to raise money. If you guys want to, check it out. It's more about the work the students are doing. We've been so blessed to be able to grow the way we have over the last decade, almost 9 years. And so we have high school group. We are on pace to have 1,000 high school groups by the end of the year. Okay? But here's where all of you can come in, which is get to know your local Turning Point USA high school leaders. Have them over for dinner. Have our local Turning Point USA leaders here and say, hey, because you understand, they're under attack every day. We just had a nice meet and greet with probably 30 young people upstairs. I said, have all of you paid a price for being a conservative? And they said, every single day I lose friends, I get persecuted. And I'll be very honest, there's an under support at times from the older generation putting their hand around some of these young people. They need your help. And there's Turning Point groups in every single kind of area across the country. I'm going to Panama City, and then I'm going to Montana after this. We're all over the place. We always are. And so, but there are young people that are needing and wanting your help. So there's a successful model where we have seen communities kind of come and embrace these young patriots that want to take a stand for our country at a fundamental level. So I'd encourage you guys to do that. We're very easy to get in touch with. We have team members here, and so we'd be happy to help assist with that.
Okay,
So.
we still got a lot of questions here, so he's going to stay a few more minutes. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, I was in DC on December 2nd. I'm in Detroit 2nd. And thank you. There was tens of thousands of us there. A few people went further than they probably should have, but there's tens of thousands of us who didn't. And yet, I feel like we're all being demonized. And that's what the left is doing to us. The ones that will go out and try to make a difference, to make a stand, to do something, but we're all being demonized.
Yes. I mean, look, I completely, and this is what, did you guys hear that at all? She said she was there on January 6th, and she feels as if they're all being demonized. And so, look, this was I saw it happening in real time. I was in Phoenix when it was all unfolding. I personally did not like when people were smashing windows. I don't know who those people were. I don't associate with those people. And again, that's still unfolding. But what I think I saw happening in real time, the intentional blurring of the 200,000 people without the ellipse as if they were the guy, like the Chewbacca man that was like, or the person with the zip ties that was like scaling the side. Like, okay, that's kind of a difference. But it was intentional, right? This is a power grab. Of course it is. And they're all of a sudden, immediately after that, they're like, oh, we want to use this as mass surveillance to try to surveil citizens and try to infiltrate their groups. And so the impeachment had actually a backfiring effect. So the impeachment actually kind of put that issue to rest, at least in the short term, because it backfired and there was a verdict that showed against it. And I think they actually regretted doing the impeachment because it actually ended the news cycle around that. But look, it's long past time for people to speak very clearly about what. First of all, we had a whole ridiculous season of actual legitimate violence against our country for months, and we still do, and that was completely and totally excused. And so I appreciate the sentiment, I really do, but I can tell you that this is a strategy where they want to basically indict 75 million people, because power for them is not a means, it is an end. And so if I can extrapolate this further, if I could tell you another thing that really frustrates me about the conservative movement is how we play into the left's own hand. So let me just be very clear. The left does not want to abolish the police. The left does not want to abolish the police. They don't want to kill them. They don't. No, it's not control. You're right. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Where they always try to create environments that will give them an excuse to have more control over your life. So they want a national police force. And so we're going around acting as if they want to get rid of the police. And so what we're really doing is we're giving them, they're like, oh, so they start with a ridiculous argument. They defund the police in Minneapolis. Crime's going to go up. And then you're going to have Ilhan Omar say, it is now time for us to have a national police force come into Minneapolis and clean up the mess. So police force take control. They don't like local sheriffs. They don't like the 5,000 local police departments that operate with their own autonomy. And I've been talking about this for weeks, and finally people are starting to mention this on television. I wrote a long piece about this that went kind of viral, which is so obvious what they're doing. But they do this in every single issue, where they create a crisis. We have a crisis manufacturing. And then they're able to validate and justify their power grab.
Okay, maybe one more question because we're watching our time. We have to get out of the building by 9 o'clock pretty sharp. And yeah, if you already had one question. No, but I was the first one to raise my hand. Okay, I'm sorry. I got you tonight. Go ahead.
When it comes to one citizen, one vote, how did you see the 2020 elections? How do you see the 2022 elections?
Yeah, again, we don't know, but we have plenty of evidence to show that there's a practice called, and this is the New York Times own term, I don't love the term, it's called granny farming, where they go into elderly homes and they take advantage of people, and we have evidence to show this happened in Wisconsin in favor of Joe Biden. We have the Nevada Native Project, where we had Joe Biden buses and people exchanging $50 for ballots in favor. We have evidence of all this. Not just evidence, and none of this was investigated, none of it was, and I don't quite get that part, why these Republican attorney generals refuse to do anything about it. I just don't get it, and speculation is actually very unhelpful because it just really drives me nuts. It really does. And so, yeah, we've had our vote diluted, and no doubt, of course we have. But so some people say I'm never voting again. That is the worst thing you could possibly say. Instead, get involved right now materially in fixing whatever voting system. But let's be positive. Let's be solution-oriented. We are living in a state right now where I trusted the verdict that came out of Florida. Did you guys trust the verdict that came out of Florida? Donald Trump won by 400,000 votes. So what we're admitting is not every single state and every single county was broken. In Florida, it used to be where you didn't trust it. Remember Brenda Snipes? And remember, what's her name? Brenda Snipes? Is that it? Is that it? Yeah. Or how about in 2000? And so this happened because DeSantis came in and made changes to it. And so these people in these other states like Arizona, they're making changes. Georgia made some minor changes. And so it's, in my opinion, and I've had some very robust disagreements with some other conservatives about this that you guys all know that have been on the voter integrity issue. They're focused on machines, and they're focused on internet connectivity, and they're focused on satellites. I think that's all fine, but if you don't get the voter roll issue, all that stuff doesn't matter. The voter rolls is the fundamental thing. All that other stuff is icing on the cake. And by the way, if they did anything there, you're not gonna prove it. The voting roll stuff's really simple, and it's also very agreeable, and you can win in court on that. When we challenge voter rolls, we're like, hey, here's 300,000 dead people. It's time to take them off the voting rolls. Like, a judge looks at that and they're like, yeah, that's a pretty good point. Like that, and the other stuff is it just gets thrown out. So that's my personal opinion. But let me be very clear. Unlike other people in the Republican Party, I am not going to let this issue go. If we do not have safe and secure elections, we do not have a country. And we need to fix the way we do elections in this country and be unapologetic in doing so. Well, I would hope so. I mean, non-citizens are now voting in municipal elections in California. They're voting in municipal elections in Vermont. But also in Arizona, not Arizona, they're thinking to put in motor voter through H.R. 1, and you have illegals that have driver's licenses. And so if you have a driver's license, then you can get a ballot, and then you're able to get into the system. And so that's already being put into question right now, big time.
I'm sorry, but I got to watch the time because we got to get the chairs and get out of here on time. But let me ask you this. If you would, stand to your feet. To see this guy come back again to the villages for Trump.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.